It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. This is another episode of Frontline Friday with my special and regularly special guest, Bridget Gleason. How are you doing?
I always like to hear, Andy. I listen expectantly with how you're gonna introduce me. So you changed it up a little bit, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Regularly special guest.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, that's a compliment. Huh? You bringing it every time.
Right on.
Right on. So, how are you today?
I am doing super. I'm actually today, Andy, working from my former office with my former peeps. Big shout out to my Yesware peeps. I'm in their San Francisco office. I had some meetings up here today, so really happy to be back with the gang.
Yeah. Gosh, we're going to have to charge them for this advertisement we just gave them.
I know. They deserve it.
Yeah, I'll send Matthew a bill. Yeah, shout out to Yesware for supporting Accelerate. We really appreciate it.
That's right.
And anything else in your universe? Now, can we talk about your travel coming up or no?
Sure.
Actually, because by the time this airs, your travel will have been in the past tense.
I know. I am actually going to Tel Aviv.
Nice.
So I'm going to go out and meet with a company out there, which I'm very excited about, who shall remain nameless for now.
And then you're going to spend some time on your own traveling around.
Oh, I know. I'm going to take a walking tour of Jerusalem, and I'm going to spend some time in. I've wanted to go to Israel for quite some time, so I'm very excited about this trip. And then I come back for a couple of days, and then I'm heading to Mexico with a friend. So I'll be in Mexico for a bit. So I'm going to take a little vacay.
I guess. How lucky.
I feel super lucky. I feel lucky and grateful.
Well, that's good.
And you've got some travel coming up too.
Yeah, just going to Maui.
Just Hawaii, I know.
Yeah, just Maui.
Old hat. Big deal.
Big deal. Yeah, no, I'm excited. I don't know if we've mentioned. Yeah, so every year for the last several years, it's become a tradition with my sister. We go to Maui and we run the Maui Half Marathon.
It's amazing.
And yeah, it's the fact that, as I like to say, we survived to do it again another day. But it's a fun run. I mean, a fun race, fun run. It's on Maui, first of all.
As fun as it can be. As fun as running a race can be.
It's, as fun as running 13 miles can be. You start at 5 a.m. It's a flat course. Weather is pretty perfect for certainly the first half of it before the sun starts coming up. But there's not many other places I think where you could do that and sort of combine the scenery with the event. So something to look forward to. So the sign of whether it's a success is whether we're here next week talking.
Okay. Well, everybody pay attention. If suddenly it's gone.
It's gone. You'll know why.
Check the Maui news.
Check the obituaries, right.
Something happened to Andy.
So we've got enough episodes stocked up, though, that we could go for a while. So anyway, that's that. We're heading off tomorrow. Again, by the time this airs, we'll have been in the past. We'll talk about the results when we get back.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, to kick things off here today, another listener question. We're starting to get listener questions now fairly regularly. So this is from Jay, who says, my manager doesn't believe in one-on-ones, and I don't feel like I'm getting enough feedback on how I'm progressing. So Jay doesn't say it, but I presume he's perhaps a little bit new. With my boss, it's all about the metrics. So how do I approach him about getting guidance on what I need to do to get better, to improve? Because he feels like he's on an island trying to figure it out by himself.
Okay, that is one-on-ones are not a religion. It's not something that you believe in or don't believe in. Okay, so that's funny to me that his manager isn't holding one-on-ones with him.
I guess he's just, looking at the metric dashboard and seeing how people are doing. Figures that's enough.
Well, I think the whole reason to have a metric dashboard is so that you can coach people.
What a shocking idea.
I know. Gosh, Andy, his manager sounds like he needs to be persuaded to give...
to use the theme of our previous episode.
Persuaded to hold one-on-ones. But the reason for metrics is to be able to coach. I think that one of the primary...
To show what possibilities exist for coaching and improvement.
That's
exactly
right. And I think that's one of the primary responsibilities of a manager is coaching. Being a good, effective coach is really important, really super important.
Well, I have to admit, I've been at a sales conference where a speaker, not this long ago, just a matter of months, where a speaker who, is VP of sales at a relatively high-profile SaaS company, basically poo-pooed one-on-one, said they're dead. And I thought, really? That's sort of my ears, perked up. It's like, well, what do you do instead?
And what do they do instead? So they're dead.
It wasn't really
sink or swim.
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, it's like it wasn't really clear. And so I was trying to really understand. Maybe they do more coaching than they let on, but it's just that sort of leading with that line. It's like, Now, certainly, I can see if some people might believe that. One-on-ones, if it's just given over to sort of a detailed deal review or something, maybe that's not as productive perhaps as they want. But a one-on-one for a coaching purpose seems, even if you can supplement it with technology that enables you to do more coaching or a more specific type of coaching, it's still really important.
So I guess for Jay, though, I think we're in violent agreement.
Okay, so how do we help him to approach his boss?
Help him to approach his boss? Because he obviously thinks that they're important as well.
So what would you say?
Well, I think the first and most direct, which he may have already done, is to ask for them. I need help specifically with this. Jay can look at his own metrics and say, "Hey, I don't feel as confident as I'd like to feel doing a demo. Can I get your advice? Can I get 20 minutes?" And maybe he just needs to call him something different. Okay, you don't believe on one-on-ones. How about I need a meeting for you to help me close more business?
It's a great idea. So be proactive, Jay, is what Bridget's saying. Be proactive, and if your manager doesn't believe in one-on-ones, then just schedule them yourself. Maybe there's something about the name that he doesn't like, and as she said, have a very specific agenda that you want to try to accomplish during that meeting.
Yeah, and maybe it's a one-on-ones if they're, if there's some checklist of things and there's not a specific purpose or agenda. Yeah, I can see how somebody would say these aren't worth my time on both sides. But I think the more specific, and as you say, to be proactive, my guess is that your manager will start to come around and won't decline those meeting requests.
Yeah, I mean, if the manager doesn't believe in them and is not proactively scheduling them, then I think the approach Bridget talks about here is right on, which is you're demonstrating initiative, which is something I think the manager would probably really approve of. You're demonstrating the initiative to go to him and seek guidance on how you can get better.
Right.
I would, as a sales manager, I would always like that. Salesperson approached me and said, "Look," and I would always do one-on-ones. But if they said, in addition, "Hey, I want input on what I could do to improve my demonstrations or whatever," yeah, I'd like that. I'll spend time. If somebody wants to invest in developing, then I'm going to invest some of my time along with them.
Right.
So, yeah, actually, it might be even better this way for you, Jay, in some respects, if you approach them and do it on a semi-regular basis. Because, again, thinking you're taking initiative type people, especially if you can match that with your outcomes and your achievements, that puts you in a pretty good light.
Yeah, like you said, it may end up being that Jay will also get more out of it with a structure and format and cadence that he requests, as opposed to just having them come up whenever or whatever regularity or frequency, and with the topics that a manager might. So it could end up being a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. And so maybe what you do is you take your sales development tool that you're using, outreach or sales off something, and make your boss a prospect, create a cadence. You're gonna email them every 4 days.
There you go.
And you have a tool there to support it.
There you go. Great idea.
Yeah. See, and you thought that was just for customers.
Ha!
Huh. So, today's topic is ambiguity. We're so structured these days with our sales approach. We got tightly defined processes. I mean, the goal is for companies to have tightly defined processes. We have salespeople that are increasingly specialized in the skill set and the things that they do, the responsibilities they have. They're scripted. We can go down so on and so forth. But, life doesn't really conform to a script very frequently. And as the old Chinese expression, or some expression, God laughs at those who have plans. So I'd heard a lecture once, years and years ago, from this business school professor about ambiguity and how, as we get into this life where it's increasingly busy and people are increasingly distracted, and even though we might have a process for how things are supposed to happen, they rarely, life rarely conforms to the script. And so we're put in these situations where what should happen next, what needs to happen next, what somebody wants to have happen next, it's all very ambiguous. And so I think I want to talk about how we help people sort of deal with those situations of ambiguity, because I think that the ability to see your way through ambiguity, to deal with ambiguity, to tolerate it, is really a differentiator for an individual.
Yeah, I definitely see that as a requirement for anyone who's working in a startup.
Oh, yeah.
You've got to be able to tolerate the gray, and not tolerate's the wrong word. To navigate and thrive in gray doesn't mean you always like it, but that you can be productive in when there's ambiguity around you, because there's often a lot of it. And like you said, sales doesn't always proceed along a straight, predictable line. As much as we'd like it to, it doesn't. And so how do you deal with the ambiguity that's out there and continue to move forward, I think is definitely an important skill.
Yeah, and it's uncertainty is just part of life. And so you think about instances when you're selling where uncertainty is really sort of the norm. And I think about, gosh, what's the next step we should be taking with this prospect? Right? That oftentimes, in an ideal sense, you'd have that always well defined. Before the end of the next step, what the next steps should be. But in a lot of cases, that's just not true, right? In some cases, it's not even possible. So understanding what you're going to do in that next stage, where there is a lot of ambiguity, really becomes critical for you.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I think about in situations that are uncertain or ambiguous is not trying to define too far out. So in a sales situation, you may know that the end goal is to make this sale, but the path and the steps between here and there may be uncertain, and there could be some ambiguity. What I've done, because I've primarily sold in and for startups, is look for what is a logical next step that I can have as my goal. So what's my next step? And oftentimes, what are some good possible next steps? Because a lot of times there's not just one right answer. And how am I fluid and flexible but keep moving towards the goal and the objective.
Yeah. So, I mean, one scenario that comes up quite a bit is you have responsibility for prospecting for new prospects, new customers, and you've got a pretty tightly defined ideal client profile, ICP, some personas, and you come across people that maybe just aren't an exact fit, but they clearly, maybe in terms of the ideal target profile, but they are perhaps an exact fit for your product or service. And I see sales reps, struggling with this all the time. What do I do? Now, how much time should I spend on these people? How do I make this decision? This falls into that gray area. And oftentimes managers don't help a lot because, they've got numbers to meet too. And oftentimes, if that works and we can get that deal, let's get that deal.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not always black and white.
Yeah,
it's not black and white.
And I mean, you get that with that ideal client profile. You get qualification. With BANT, is if you use the BANT model, let's say, for qualification, and someone that you think is a great fit, and even experienced salespeople that somebody's just not grabbing at every deal, but somebody that's saying, okay, gosh, if I don't deal with this person, maybe it's somebody that my competitors are really going to deal with. We're going to lose this opportunity, but maybe they don't have the timing, maybe not quite right. But I do want to work it, but I'm being pulled. That's suddenly the normal sales environment is just rife with ambiguity about what should you be doing. And so it really calls the question to me, is how much leeway, and you can answer this question, Bridget, is how much leeway do your sales professionals have, your individual contributors have, to sort of make those decisions, to take initiative in the face of ambiguity, even if it runs the risk of running a little bit counter to either your ICP or your qualification methodology or whatever?
I give room. I leave room. I think I heard a great distinction. We talk about being data-driven, and I read something that really we don't want to be data-driven. We want to be data-informed. You still need the human element of judgment. And so I would say with my reps, I want them to be data-informed against the ICP or against whatever signals they're getting. But it's not as cut and dried as being data-driven. So where I explore is I want to know how they're thinking about it. And I want to understand their thinking. And if their thinking is sound and it makes sense, why they continue to pursue perhaps an opportunity that's a little bit out of a norm, go for it. I look for trends, though. I mean, there are people that are always chasing the unicorn, and it never happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I do look for trends. Does this person normally do that or not? And there are some reps that they don't do it very often. And so when they do, I really pay attention. I think there's something here that they sense. I'm going to let them go with it. Sometimes I let them go with it because the best way for them to learn that this is a waste of time is to go waste time. And again, I don't do it all the time, but sometimes the best way for them to learn is let them waste time.
Yeah. Well, I worked for a CEO in one startup who actually was really excellent at that. I mean, he was prepared to let you lose deals in order to learn. So it forced you to deal with ambiguity yourself, right? And he's knew it as a learning experience. Because, the ambiguity forces you to listen.
That's right.
And I think that's really the thing for sales professionals, listening to this, is that you may have a process, but the fact is, very rarely, I think, do prospects 100% coincide with your process and the way they buy. So
wouldn't that be great if they did?
Yeah.
I wish they would just follow the directions.
Yeah, why can't they just follow the rules, right?
I know, follow the directions. I'll give them directions exactly how it's going to be.
Yeah.
Well, they don't really go for that, unfortunately.
That should really be your first sales call, right? So, Mr. Prospect, if you want to buy from me, This is what you have to do.
No, Mr. Prospect, you will buy from me, and here's how it's going to go.
And here's how it's going to go, right?
Let's just be let's just be directive
That's right.
at the beginning.
That's true. I was too soft. That's exactly
I know,
right.
too soft, too soft.
So, but yeah, it doesn't really conform. So there is all this inherent ambiguity. Is you have to listen. This really puts the premium on this being in the moment, really paying attention to what the prospect says, not looking ahead to the next step in your process, not looking ahead to the next question you're going to ask. I was listening to a recorded call some reps made yesterday, and they're asking questions, good questions. This is a little digression, but they're asking reasonably good questions, but they never asked a follow-up question. And so every time the customer responded, their response was, okay. And then they'd ask their next question. So they weren't listening. And
I can't tell you how much I hear that.
And you're going to miss the opportunities that the customer is really out there. They're putting the answer out there. Ideal situations, they're saying, I really want them to ask me another question because we want to talk more about this. And you deprive them of that opportunity if you just say, interesting, and move to the next one. You're not paying attention. There's this opportunity that exists. I like to say the opportunity exists in ambiguity. And if you're just like all your competitors and you're just blasting through your script and your questions, you're going to miss that. But if you've listened and you catch the ambiguities, then there's an opportunity. Then you drill down on it. Then you've done something that your competitors haven't done. And you're suddenly in the winning position.
It's also just more interesting. For me,
well, that's true.
Gosh, I just think about, let's talk about the human element of selling and me wanting to make sure that I enjoy the hours that I spend in my job, listening and hearing what they have to say. And part of the ambiguity is actually what makes the whole thing for me interesting and rewarding and challenging. Is if I could just proceed like a robot. I said to somebody the other day that I'm not looking for paint by number. Just always do it the same way, put red there, put green here. I need some room to paint outside the little lines. And I think, I don't necessarily want my sales reps creating a whole new canvas because we're marching down a certain path, but I do feel that there should be room to be creative and to listen and to just sort of be in this dance with this prospect or customer. And that's what's really enjoyable. You'll have better results, first of all. So you'll win more, which is fun. But there's so much ambiguity. Learning how to turn that into a positive, I think, is the real trick.
Yeah, well, I think that I was sort of losing my train of thought for a second. But I think that you sort of look at it as like improvisation.
Yes.
And that's what the ambiguity does, right? I had a guest on the show named Kathy Salat who teaches improv and has written a great book about how you incorporate improvisational techniques into your selling, into your business world, and encourage people to go back and listen to that episode because it's a fascinating conversation. And she talks about how we're building. If you have this ambiguity in improv, there's tons of ambiguity, right? You don't know where anybody's going to go other than a situation that starts. And maybe jazz is the same way. If you're a couple players and you're jamming, you're sort of riffing off what the other person has done before, and improv, you're doing the same thing. Is you're sort of taking a chance, but you have to really pay attention and listen, and be open to the answers that you might be hearing, the information you're getting, and then build on that.
Yeah, because it could take it in a slightly different direction.
And that's where the winning opportunity is.
And that's where the winning opportunity is.
In previous episodes, and I've talked with other guests, is if you can take the information you learn from the customer, take the data you've learned about them doing your research, the insights you may have, and synthesize that into a vision of what it is that's a great solution for them. That's the place you want to be. And it's really in the ambiguity, I think, with the prospect and in your process, you find those those niches, let's say, that stand out that, and to some degree, you can sort of say it's a little bit like the challenger. You're sort of challenging some of the paradigm, but you can't do that if you're not listening.
Really hard to.
What'd you say?
Hard to do that if you...
I'm sorry.
She's just like talked right over me. That's even better.
Yeah, that's right. That's a great sales technique. Talk right over the prospect.
That's right.
So, yeah, I apologize. I was trying to put my cheap joke in there.
No, it was good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. The pat on the back, Andy. That was very good. Okay. Well, so I guess at the end of the day is that if your prospect doesn't quite fit your ideal customer profile, but you know they're fit and you know they're qualified, then you don't necessarily need to throw them back.
No, you have to be skilled at being able to still move them through a process. But yeah, and that's a great example. There are, I'm sure, countless others. And yeah, you want to weigh that against sort of the time it might take to close a deal, and the likelihood, and just these internal judgments that you might make. But again, that's where the human judgment comes in. That's why I don't believe that salespeople are going to be replaced with robots or scripts or anytime soon, because there still is that human judgment that's required in making some of these calls, making some of these decisions. Okay,
so you're a believer.
I'm a believer.
In people.
I'm a believer in people, 100%. I'm a believer in people.
I agree. I mean, I think that without digressing too far, I think the reports and of how many business-to-business sales people are going to lose their jobs over the next 5 years, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. As long as you're taking the steps you need to continue to be a value provider for your prospects. I mean, if you're just going to stay stagnant, then you're going to get washed out anyway.
That's right.
It has nothing to do with the way the industry is evolving.
That's right.
But you need to pay attention and do what you need to do to keep getting better. But as long as you're doing that, as long as you're staying ahead of the curve with regard to your prospects, then you'll be in a good position.
Agreed.
Wow. So
agreed.
We've reached the end of another episode. We want to encourage people to continue to submit email questions, because we've had some great questions submitted. A good one today from Jay, and that we eventually got around to answering. And it sort of ties in with the whole topic about ambiguity, is that you need to be able to advocate. You need to be able to take the initiative, right? And the ambiguity is an opportunity for somebody to take the initiative. Jay's question was, not getting the proactive coaching from his manager. Well, self-advocate. Go in and ask for the guidance and demonstrate the initiative. And in both cases, I think with your boss and certainly with the customers, at the end of the day, you'll be rewarded. All right. So long story short, submit your questions to andy@zerotimeselling.com, and we will answer them on the air. We'll choose some to answer. And Bridget, you're off.
Yes. No, our listeners probably won't notice a break since we
record a little bit in advance.
We record a little in advance. Yes, and Andy, looking forward to hear how the half marathon goes. Yeah,
well, mine pales in comparison to your big adventure. So have a good time. Fly safe. I'm sure everybody wishes you well. And friends, again, thank you as always for listening to us and giving us some of your time here on a Friday.
That's right.
And we'll look forward to talking to you next week.
All right. Take care.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.